The Democratic Party and what it was customarily associated with, normally associated with, how it was supposed to be the party of the working class, you were throwing your own aside. You did it to elected officials that got themselves in a speck of trouble. You threw them to the wolves. You had Supreme Court justices refusing to answer questions as to whether or not they were a woman or define what a woman was, even though they were married with children. It's a whole bunch of ridiculous nonsense that was going around and going on with the Democratic Party. We're not blind to what's transpiring right now. We're not blind to the specter hovering over all of us and how dangerous times can be, how hardship seems imminent as it pertains to tariffs and beyond. We get what tariffs may cause, the problems that it may cause. Inflation, potential recession, we get all of that. But we also get that Donald Trump told us exactly what the hell he was going to do. And that not only did the vast majority of the American people still saw him closer to normalcy than we saw the Democratic Party, but because of that, regardless of his ways, Donald Trump is actually trusted more than y'all. He didn't hint towards misogyny for black men that could possibly vote against Kamala Harris.
All right, guys, so we have some more humiliating news for the Democrat Party. And the reason why this is humiliating for the Democrat Party is because this can only be a story in a world where the Democrat Party is an absolute shambles, okay, which is currently the state of the Democrat Party. They are a national embarrassment. Their approval rating is 21%, right? It is hard to find many things more unpopular than the modern Democrat Party in this country. And because of that, the party is open for anybody to take over. And as I've talked about earlier today, it looks like the far left is going to take over the Democrat Party, right? That's what it looks like. Unless the establishment Democrats can find somebody or some puppet that could possibly save the Democrats from being completely taken over by the far left. And that puppet may actually be Stephen A. Smith. As crazy as it sounds, the more I think about Stephen A. and him now seriously considering running for president, he was flirting with it before and said, nah, I'm not going to do it. Now, apparently he's talked to some people and he's actually really trying to do it. It actually kind of makes sense, right? And I'm going to tell you guys what I'm thinking. But first, I want to play this clip of a poll that was conducted, including Stephen A. Smith. And he wasn't doing too bad versus the heavyweights of the Democrat Party. Take a look.
What if we committed actual time to trying to do an exclusive Pablo Torre finds out first of its kind political poll? We commissioned a legitimate survey with Rasmussen of 1,021 likely American voters with dozens of questions conducted over 2 days, online and by phone. If the 2028 Democratic primary were held today, who would you vote for? Kamala Harris coming in at 45%, Stephen A. Smith coming in at 24%. Other 17% wouldn't vote, 6%, not sure, 9%. Another head-to-head in the primary, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 32%. Stephen A. Smith, 28%. Other, 18%, wouldn't vote, 7%, not sure, 15%.
The other not sure collective, 33%. So let's just call it what it is. He's still coming in third. A little discouraging for AOC.
This is where in the crosstabs I was like, okay, this is getting a little dark. Head to head, Gavin Newsom, 31%. Stephen A., 28%.
This is bad news for Gavin Newsom. I think if you're looking at this, I mean, him and Stephen are competitors across multiple vectors now. They're both podcast hosts.
Yes.
They are both potential presidential candidates. And you would think that Gavin would have a little bit more space between him and Stephen A., in this situation. Governor of California, has some experience. People are basically like, meh.
This is, I think, something like a bigger reveal. This is a head-to-head matchup for the White House, okay? 2028 presidential election in a legit political poll, the Rasmussen reports, Pablo Torre finds out survey, more than 1,000 likely American voters with a margin of error of 3%. If the 2028 presidential election were held today, who would you vote for? J.D. Vance, 38%. Stephen A. Smith, 34%.
Yeah, so that is a poll from Rasmussen, okay? A bombshell poll, because Stephen A. is very competitive with some of the Democrat Party heavyweights. I mean, he's competitive with AOC. He's competitive with Gavin Newsom. He is somewhat competitive with Kamala Harris, who right now seems to be the favorite, right? It seems like Democrats want to run with Kamala Harris again, which I think would be a disaster. But, you know, hey, this is a sign that the party is extremely far left and woke. And I don't know, maybe also the base really wants a woman, okay, to be president. I think that's also a part of kind of what's going on with the Democrats. But anyways, I don't really buy into this hate for J.D. Vance, right? Notice how J.D. Vance was like barely beating Stephen A. I just don't believe that everybody hates J.D. Vance, right? I think there's a narrative out there that everybody hates J.D., but, you know, I don't know. I think J.D. is a likable person. I'm not sure exactly what it is about people disliking J.D., but regardless, again, Stephen A. performing pretty well, right? For somebody that is an outsider, that is not really involved in politics. He talks about politics, but he's not known for politics. So again, for him to come out and to now say that he's seriously considering running for president after talking to some people behind the scenes because of how well he's performing in the polls, I think it makes sense in a certain scenario, and I'm going to expand on it. But first, I want to play this clip so that we can learn a little bit more about Stephen A. and his potential run for president.
All right, if you watch Chris Cuomo's show, which comes in just a few minutes right after my show, you often see Stephen A. Smith. And guess what? Stephen A. Smith made a little bit of news today when he said he is seriously thinking about running for president of the United States. This is him on stage at the National Association of Broadcasters.
Unfortunately, over the last few weeks, I've had no choice but to get a bit more serious about it. I've been approached by people on Capitol Hill. I've been approached by people who are elected officials in office, whether it's governors or mayors or what have you, and people have legitimately and seriously asked me about that. I have no desire to be a politician. My life is pretty well, but I've decided I'm no longer going to close that door. I'm going to keep my options open. I'm going to entertain the possibility, and if it comes in 2020, late 2026, 2027, where I look at this country and I think it's an absolute mess, and there's legitimate reason to believe, whether it's via exploratory committees or anything else, that I indeed would have a legitimate shot to win the presidency of the United States, I am not going to rule it out, and I'm not playing. I just think that it's a mess right now. I'm not scared. There's a lot that I have to learn. I am no aficionado, make no mistake about it. But damn it, let me hunker down for 2 or 3 months. I'll know the issues. And once that happens, then imagining me on a debate stage with these people, these politicians, this is what I do for a living. And if for no other reason than to stand on a debate stage with tens of millions of people watching, where I get to sit back and talk about what you've been doing as politicians to literally dissipate and disintegrate the quality of America before our very eyes because of your own selfishness. Me having an opportunity to do that, that is what I mean when I say I will eat them alive. I am not a politician. I don't have a political record for them to lean on. They all do, which means I get to look at your record and what you've done and challenge whether you can legitimately say, not just with the cameras rolling, but in front of my face, that you actually operated on behalf of what was in the best interest of all of America. Who's going to pull that off in front of my face? Good luck with that. I wish they would.
Stephen A. Smith went a step further, talking about the people he'd be willing to take on and challenge during his hypothetical run for office.
Marco Rubio is formidable as our Secretary of State. J.D. Vance, we saw him in the vice presidential debates. He was impressive. It's not to say that there aren't impressive people on the left. I could think about an abundance of candidates. Governor Westmore for Maryland, Josh Shapiro for Pennsylvania. I have a lot of respect for those guys and the jobs that they're doing. I just don't know how interested they are in being the president. I suspect Gavin Newsom is very interested as the governor of California to be in the race, but we ultimately have to look at California.
Yeah.
You know, not your podcast,
Yeah.
not what you're saying on your podcast and the fact that you're talking to people across the aisle. We get to look at your record, taxes, cost of living, you know, the border, you know, all of this other stuff. We get to look at all of that.
All right, joining me now for reaction to all of
Yeah, so presumably Stephen A. is going to be running as a Democrat. I mean, that would definitely be the easiest path for him because I don't think that he would have a snowball's chance in hell of winning in a GOP primary, right? And Stephen A. is also a Democrat. I mean, let's be real, okay? He is center left, okay? And he's also woke, but he is more sane than the average Democrat, right? And this is why at first, when Stephen A. was kind of joking about this and putting it out there as a way to clown the Democrats by saying that, hey, your party's so bad, you suck so bad that I could beat you in the Democrat primary. At first, I didn't really put that much thought into it, right? Like serious thought into it. But now that he's come out and he is basically seriously saying that, hey, I might run, thinking about the current state of the Democrat Party and the Democrat Civil War, honestly, it makes sense. And again, this is a sad thing to say for the Democrats, but somebody like Stephen A. is the Democrats' best hope, right? Because here's the thing about Stephen A., right? Listen, I know it sounds crazy, but if you think about it, President Trump set the precedent that, hey, you don't need to be somebody that is in politics. You don't need to be, you know, somebody that's an expert or have been a politician or anybody like that. Like, you're somebody that can come from the business or the entertainment world, right? In Stephen A.'s case, the entertainment world, and you can run for president, okay? And because you don't have a record to run on, that is actually an advantage, right? What Stephen A. was talking about in regards to Gavin Newsom, he basically was saying that Gavin Newsom is going to pretend to be a moderate, but look at California, right? Look at your record. Stephen A. understands that he can criticize all of the politicians on stage, but the politicians can't really criticize him because he doesn't have a record, right? Just like what happened back in 2015, 2016 when Trump ran. One of the biggest advantages that he had is that, hey, I've never been a politician, so you can't really say what I would do or what I wouldn't do. And it also gives Stephen A. the same flexibility that Trump had in the sense that it's hard to pinpoint Stephen A. on a position or what he believes because, again, he doesn't have a policy record, right? He doesn't have a voting record that will tether him to a certain position that may or may not be popular, right? Again, this is why Kamala Harris couldn't run as a moderate or why Gavin Newsom can't run as a moderate because, again, their record says they're far leftist, right? Stephen A. doesn't have that. So he can basically take any position that he wants. And he's one of the only Democrats that are smart enough to come out here and to just simply say the truth about basic biological facts. Okay, biological boys should not compete against girls in sports, right? He understands that. A vast majority of Democrats don't. He also has the TV presence, right? For as much as I really don't like watching Stephen A., some people do, right? Apparently enough people do that Disney decided that this dude is worth $100 million, right? So he has that stage presence, right? There's an entertainment factor that will attract people and he will build up some supporters, okay, in the same way that President Trump did, right? Just because of the fact that he's extremely entertaining and also on top of that, he's probably going to play the radical moderate, right? Oh, both sides are, bad, right? And, which again is the exact same thing that President Trump did back in 2015, 2016, right? Both sides are bad, right? That's basically how Trump won the GOP primary. So I know it sounds like a joke, right? Like to think about it, but it actually makes sense when you really think about it. And this is the dangerous part about it, right? This is the part about it that, again, a lot of people need to realize, right? That if Stephen A. actually does run, okay, as the radical moderate, right? Because I think that's the lane that he's going to try to run in if he does run. there's a 100% chance he will be bought and sold by the establishment Democrats, right? Because the establishment Democrats are trying to save themselves from the radical left, right? They're trying to save themselves from AOC, the Jasmine Crockett's, right? The individuals that want the far left takeover of the party, right? And they're currently losing the Civil War. Stephen A might actually be their best bet. And they may put money behind him to help retain their control over the party, right? Because unlike the establishment Democrats, again, Stephen A, his credibility is not shot because he doesn't have a record, right? But all of the Democrats, all of the governors, okay, they all do, okay? And their records, they have supported the most Looney Tunes positions of the Democrat Party over the last few years. So if Stephen A is running as this radical moderate figure, then he probably has a lane, right? There's probably a lane for him, and I think there's a decent chance that he could win, okay? And if he does win, again, best believe he will be a puppet of the Democrat Party, right? Like that's the part about it. He's not going to actually govern like a radical moderate. No, he's going to govern like a Democrat, right? That's what he's going to do, because ultimately he will be a pawn of the Democrat Party. He doesn't have his own thoughts, his own policy positions. No, Stephen A takes whatever position is most popular at the moment, and then he turns around and criticizes the Democrats for believing things that he used to believe before he figured out it was unpopular for Democrats to believe these things, right? That's what Stephen A does, right? So again, I'm just saying, I know it sounds crazy, but I really don't think it's so far-fetched. I think that the Democrats, their potential field is so weak, right? Their potential candidates, their bench is so weak that, yeah, I really do believe that Stephen A could beat a vast majority of them. I really do. I really do. There is an appetite on the left, okay, for a radically moderate figure, right? Because although, we talk about the Looney Tunes and how far left the basic Democrat Party is, I think a lot of people got to remember that, the center left, they're not as loud as the Looney Tunes, right? And I don't think the center left really likes the Looney Tunes. And I'm talking about like the Bill Maher types, right? They don't like the Looney Tunes like that, right? And I think that there are people out there like that. And I think there are more Democrats like that than people think, right? And they probably would want somebody like a Stephen A, who, again, does not have the far left record of somebody like a Gavin Newsom, who will pretend to be the radical moderate, but he's not. Again, I think Stephen A would appeal to those people, again, like the Bill Maher types, very heavily. But the real question after that would be, could Stephen A beat a Republican? And I think the answer to that question just depends on how the Trump administration is doing at that point in time, right? Because I'm assuming that the next GOP candidate nominee, he's going to be a continuation of Trump's agenda, right? Especially if Trump's agenda is successful, right? If it's successful, then I can imagine that it doesn't matter who Democrats put up. Whoever Trump's successor is going to win, right? However, if the Trump administration ends badly, then yeah, there could be a lane for somebody like a Stephen A. And I think that's why he's kind of waiting to see how things go. In that scenario, Stephen A would have the best chance of becoming president, right? But if President Trump and his presidency go well, then I don't think he has a shot. It doesn't matter who Democrats put up, right? But at the same time, Stephen A could be a useful tool for the establishment Democrats to try to maintain power and control of the party that is currently being taken over by the far left, right? And they're really grasping to maintain control. And Stephen A probably gives them the best shot, to be honest with you, right? Because, again, all the other governors that are going to pretend to be moderates, they're stained by their records, right? They can't pretend to be moderates because their records show that they're not moderate, right? The Democrat Party is not a moderate party, right? So they need to have somebody that doesn't have a record at all who can pretend to be a moderate, right? Like Stephen A. So we'll see. I mean, again, it's far-fetched, right? It's still something that, Stephen A, slim shot of him actually becoming a Democrat Party nominee or becoming president, but it's not something we should completely dismiss. We've seen crazier things happen, to be honest with you. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.